This year, we're celebrating 45 years of Vicmap, and as we set our sights on the horizon and gear up to take advantage of the opportunities before us, it's important to reflect on the past and celebrate the legacy of those that have come before us. Vicmap has a long and proud tradition of pushing boundaries to create relevant spatial information. The current suite of data themes that make up Vicmap are the primary linked authoritative foundational spatial datasets for Victoria. They're the unifying connection between things, systems, people and the environment. And these foundational themes are regarded by the UN as essential for successful economy, supporting countries to reach their sustainable development goals. And even if you don't know it, if you're looking at a map of Victoria, whether it's on your phone or the navigation system in your car, you'll be viewing foundational data from Vicmap. So let's go back to 1975 when it all started. Although the Victorian government had been producing maps since the 1950s, it was in the 1970s that Vicmap was born. The Accelerated Topographic Mapping Program was a statewide capture program which covered the whole of Victoria at a finer scale than ever before. This program would continue for 18 years due to the painstaking work involving an army of cartographers, photogrammetry experts, surveyors and field staff, taking 4 months to produce a single 25-thou map sheet. Using pencils and mechanical rulers, maps were generated from black and white analogue aerial photos. Yes, no digital available in those days. And they used things like fence posts and road intersections as control points to determine position. These were the first large-scale metric series of topographic maps over Victoria, based on the nationally consistent Australian Geodetic Datum 1966. These maps were primarily for government use, but were also sold to the community out of the State Map Centre. The 1980s ushered in a new era of big fashion and new technology marvels, which made possible the first ever digital representation of cadastral boundaries. The Vicmap program was in full flight by this stage, and we started to do much more outreach, especially with budding geographers. Each of the 25-thou map sheets generated through the Accelerated Topographic Mapping Program were used as control points to create the first digital view of rural towns and cities across Victoria. To do the work, the survey and mapping staff borrowed the State Electricity Commission's mainframe computer system, one of a handful of its kind at the time. And at the time, digitising meant taking the pencil plot plans and using computer-aided drafting to digitise the line work. This was quickly replaced with the purchase of intergraph stations, which had a digitising puck. No, that's not a mouse. And they used the pucks to trace over the pencil plot or piece of film to capture the digital line work. This was super high tech at the time and completely revolutionised the survey and mapping team's massive workbenches into a relatively compact workstation that we might recognise today. Still, no option to work from home back then, as the equipment was highly specialised, with the first generation Interpro workstation retailing for around $25,000 each. During the 1980s, national coordination started to gain importance, and in January 1986, the Australian Land Information Council was established by agreement between the Australian Prime Minister and the heads of government in response to a clear and growing need to coordinate the collection and transfer of land-related information between different levels of government. New Zealand later joined the party and ANZLIC was born. On to the 1990s, a decade that transformed the Vicmap maintenance model. It was also a decade defined by election of Jeff Kennett's Liberal National Coalition Party, who brought in reforms such as dissolving Victoria's 210 councils into 78 new municipalities and splitting up and privatising the electricity market. It was also the era when the World Wide Web really took off, opening up geospatial technology to the masses. Prior to 1990, you had to go to 2 places if you wanted a statewide map of Victoria. And in a step change that defines the statewide coverage users of Vicmap enjoy today, the Melbourne Water Metropolitan Map Base Agreement was negotiated in 1994, bringing together the metro dataset held by the Melbourne and Metropolitan Border Works and the rural dataset held by the Division of Surveying and Mapping to create a single state cadastral map base for Victoria. And we're still enhancing this critical dataset to this day through the $45 million Digital Cadastre Modernisation Program. In the same year, Cabinet directed the Office of Geographic Data Coordination to create a road network for emergency service dispatch, delivered for the Metropolitan area in 1995 as the first stage of the State Digital Road Network and the beginning of an important new application of Vicmap for emergency dispatch and response. But perhaps one of the most defining moments for Vicmap happened in 1997 when the Property Information Project, or PIP as it's affectionately known, was initiated. The project aimed to identify and map the estimated 2.4 million properties in Victoria by linking the state's digital map base with property information held by Victoria's then 78 municipalities. This paved the way for 3 decades of cooperation and data exchange between state and local government, and its outstanding success underscores the importance of local government as a participant in the Victorian geospatial industry. The PIP still underpins, enables and supports so much of the state's mapping activity to this day. The 2000s brought even more technological change, with GPS technology becoming ubiquitous and the rise of the smartphone transforming our lives. A defining moment for Vicmap during this period was the efforts to harmonise geospatial data across all states and territories to develop the Foundation Spatial Data Framework, or FSDF. ANZSLIC later ratified 10 foundational spatial data themes, which has become the national framework data themes for Australasia. FSDF was inspired by the United Nations Global Fundamental Geospatial Data Themes, which are recognised as critical to implementation of the 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda and its 17 Sustainable Development Goals. Built on the foundation of the Geodetic Control Network, Vicmap themes were created by integrating a patchwork of data sources with different structures and semantics into a coherent suite of maintainable statewide products. The FSDF paved the way for nationally consistent spatial datasets, most notably the Geocoded Address File, GNAF, which was released in 2004 by the Public Sector Mapping Agency, a company owned by the governments of Australia. Today, GNAF is recognised as the most requested high-value geospatial dataset and is a shining example of the importance of nationally consistent data. And in the closing out of the decade in 2009, disaster did strike with the devastating Black Saturday bushfires. The subsequent Royal Commission underscored the importance of geospatial information, not just for emergency dispatch in the cities, but also for response and recovery in the bush. The Royal Commission recommended that DELWP provide emergency response organisations with support through the provision of digital and hard copy mapping and imagery free of charge, and Vicmap became the trusted source of data for the statewide 000 service in Victoria. And as we head closer to our modern era, we can't talk about the 2010s without mentioning open data. Prior to 2012, Vicmap was funded through revenue generated from data sales, but with the introduction of the Data Vic Access policy, it meant that most Vicmap data is now available at no charge, with more than 400 datasets released under the policy. This open data continues to be a key driver of innovation and new business opportunity to this day. And Vicmap is downloaded over 30 million times a year and is the #1 dataset on data.vic. This was also the decade we went mobile, launching Vicmap Viewer in 2018, making 10,000 richly detailed topographic maps available for use on mobile phones. In its first year of release, over 280,000 topographic maps were downloaded, and a proud moment for us was when the Vicmap Viewer was used by search and rescue volunteers to find missing hikers in Mount Buffalo National Park. So, as the year that's been like no other starts a new decade that no one can predict, Vicmap is positioning itself to respond to the rapid digital transformation that is upon us. Building on our proud history, it's time to redefine what foundational spatial data means for the 21st century. We've renovated our trusted brand, launched a new look that reflects the innovation and future vision for Vicmap to unlock the power of location. And we're also launching Vicmap Labs, which will be used by DELWP as a brand mark for where we test our innovation work. Our future strategy includes further aligning with two important new United Nations global fundamental themes: buildings and settlements and physical infrastructure, which includes utilities, telecommunications and water infrastructure. And we want to take Vicmap into the third and fourth dimensions so we can feed the data-hungry digital twin models that are rapidly progressing, requiring a paradigm shift in the way geospatial data is collected, managed and represented. The creation of these data themes will challenge us like every one of them before them, but we have new tools and capabilities such as high quality imagery and elevation that we can train machine learned algorithms to do what used to take in months and days. We've got computer processing and cloud computing so we can process the big data sets that we need. And we've got amazingly talented people who are yet again showing their adaptability to keep a pace with an industry that in many respects has always been disrupted. We're well equipped for the task. So we hope you'll continue to help us tell our story by contributing to the story map we've created to mark our 45th anniversary. Thank you.